Dan will jump up like me and he'll find it. He doesn't need to, they're long, but it's just leave the street. That's a good way to get it.
Nothing else.
Hey, Joe. You guys are able to trim it, but we have it out with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is 3 p.m. Thursday, September 1st, 2016. Time for the meeting of the Gateway Services Community Development District Board of Supervisors meeting. We have a quorum. Would you please stand and join us in the pledge to our flag and country? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. If you have a noise-making machine similar to this, please put it on mute for the balance of the meeting. If you wish to speak to the board this evening, there are forms on the table near the door to fill out and give to the manager. We are not going to entertain conversation from the board about the budget until 5 p.m., at which time we will open officially a budget hearing meeting, at which time you will be able to tell us what a wonderful job we did on the 2017 budget. Mr. Manager, do we have folks who would like to address the board this afternoon?
Yes, we do. We have two. First is Ed Tinkle, pond maintenance and pond aeration.
Dan, I'm going to have to hold the concepts tonight. It's been a big agenda.
I'll go quick.
Thank you.
Just don't say talking fast. For the record, Ed Tinkle, 11180 Bent Pine Drive. First issue, real quick, the pond maintenance project and the wetland projects are out for bid. The advertisements were in the newspaper. August 26th, the pre-bid meeting, mandatory pre-bid meeting, 10 o'clock, September 8th, Thursday, next. I attended the meeting with Pelican Reserve and got some pretty good notes because I have a feeling we're going to have the same vendors over here. So saw some things that we need to talk about, and we'll probably have an addendum to ours to address some issues that we didn't cover and left out. But nothing major at this point in time. Second thing, Gary at the last meeting suggested that we talk about and be inclusive of the pond aeration on phase one. I prepared a email, sent it to Tyler and to Chris, and this morning we had a meeting going over it and just what it would take to get this going. You have in front of you a table that basically shows the 13 phase one ponds, the residential commercial bank lengths, the other, which would be non-residential commercial, the acres, and then where we have bathymetrics at current. The CES is the one that Jeff Keys did. The other is the one being performed right now by Aquagenics. As you can see, we have 13 ponds and we have 8 bathymetrics done or being done. We're 5 short. We need to get authorization by the board to, I suppose, April and or Chris to allow us to go out and get the bathymetrics for those other 5 ponds that don't have an X marked across from them. At the same time, I'm providing Chris with the information, since he's new, of the bathymetrics that CES did so that he can get his opinion on, or give his opinion on, what he feels that the information in those is adequate and accurate. My concern is that the one pond that we had done by 3 vendors, we had some discrepancies between data. And I'm concerned on maybe the data, but I'll leave that up to Chris to make that decision. So even if we had to do those 4 over, that would be 9 times about 109 ponds, be somewhere around $5,000 to do the bathymetrics. $3,000 if we just do the 5 that need to be done, and it would be about another $4,000 to do the other ones repetitive, do them also. So in the ballpark, we need a go-ahead for that so that they can expend those funds.
And
Next-
exactly what is that? What does the bathymetrics tell us? Just real brief.
Basically a contour level of the pond, underwater. what the bottom looks like, and they need that to be able to do the aeration design, because theoretically what you want to do is put your diffusers at locations where you have your depth. The other part of it, and that we have done before, is we've done sediment testing to find out how many inches of sediment is in those ponds. So it's a
Twofold.
double task,
Okay,
twofold.
Great, thanks.
Ed, hold on just a second, please.
Sorry.
Does the board want to make a motion to approve the bathymetric work on the 5 ponds that have not been done at this time?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
And I have a motion and a second. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, because of the new legislative enactments about public comment, you may want to open the floor to anybody in the public who wants to comment on that particular motion, because it's not on the agenda.
Anyone in the public want to comment on the motion to perform bathymetric work on our 5 of our 13 ponds in phase 1 that has not yet been done? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Please continue.
Next item is that once we, and let Chris get his feet on the ground, next thing is to start talking to FPL to figure out how we're going to do the aeration or the electrical work to provide electrical service to wherever these blowers are going to go. So that's next. Next item is the funding. This is going to cost somewhere between,
sorry.
the next item is the funding of this. It's going to cost somewhere between $500, maybe $750,000 to put the aeration on these 13 ponds. One option would be to take it out of cash, I guess. Another option would be to go and start and formulate another SRF loan application. Don't think, because of the design work and the field work and everything else that has to be done, this is going to be done concurrently with the current Lake Bank Restoration Project. It's going to have to be deferred. The one thing that's good about putting in the aeration, it's not seasonal sensitive. So we can have high water, we can have low water, and we can install that, so we don't have to worry about meeting a timeline that's wintertime, dry season. So, but we do need to figure out how we're going to pay for this. So a discussion you guys might want to have is whether or not you want to have Tetra Tech make application again to SRF for a second loan for pond aeration. Gary's holding his hand up.
Ed, you mentioned the electrical, obviously an essential part of the thing, but you didn't give us an idea of roundabout cost. Let's say for the 9, and then let's say overall, which then, if we go into some type of funding, is that significant enough, and I'm looking to you, for us to also contemplate as the total?
I can only give you what I've learned from either Gephardt and/or Tyler. It looks like that Pelican Preserve, for its 27 ponds, was averaging, and keep in mind it's an average, it's somewhere in the neighborhood, a little less than $6,000 final cost per acre. We got 90 acres in phase 1. That doesn't include FPL's cost, nor does it include design. That's about as close as I can go at this point in time.
Now, when you're saying, but you're using this gauge of an acre,
Yes, sir.
okay, so just to be clarifying it, the acre then is synonymous with the number of these units that we're going to need to be able to handle that area, correct?
And each pond's different.
Now, does each one of these then require a totally separate electrical service, or are they in parallel, or?
Gary, to answer that, the only two that I can think of that would possibly have a chance to be together would be 126 and 116, because they're next to each other.
Right.
But because of the length and the linear nature of 116, it's so long, I just don't know if the engineering will allow that to work that way. We may have to have a power source for Walden, we may have to have a power source for Mahogany Run North. We just haven't got to those details yet.
All right, the second part then becomes the engineering for this. And there's this handsome young guy sitting behind you that's looking up, he raised his eyebrows, so he's interested. So, what kind of money are we, Tyler, what are we looking at here?
Hello. So I'm Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. I really don't know, to be honest with you. We would have to look into what all is going to be required to do the work. What sort of funding are we going to get? Are we going to have to do a facilities plan to get SRF money to fund it through that. That would be, you know, more expense than just financing it directly. There's a lot that it depends on, so I don't have an answer for you on that today.
Okay, so then 2 more questions. Number 1, you were involved in the Pelican Preserve or not?
Was to some extent. It was originally designed by CES.
Okay, okay. And having said that, how long is it going to realistically take to put all the pieces together to be able to then go for the SRF funding?
Tell me what the 2 dates you gave me.
Not very long. The next 2 hearings that they're going to have for SRF loans is one in November and one in February. I think you have to have everything to the DEP 60 days in advance, so.
Okay, so February is the earliest.
So
you
February
could
would
go
be
for
the
it.
realistic shot at that, if that's the route that the board chose to go. So which means we would have to be done by end of November roughly, which I don't think is an issue.
Okay, so having said that, do you need direction from this body to be able, is that what you're, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, if you guys want to go SRF to fund this, to me, that is the logical thing, because we finance it over 20 years of basically low interest rate, 2%.
Stephen, input, please?
Well, I guess my only concern would be what other projects you have down the horizon.
Okay,
You know, it's not like you can't keep going back for more, but at some point you want to have a larger plan, so you know, okay, I'm gonna need to borrow this much and then this much. 750 is probably okay to do with the state revolving loan.
okay. Does this start getting towards a rate study?
And not, no, I wouldn't say so, not for this.
Nope.
Be about the same thing you did, Gary, on the ponds,
Right.
in your budget, where Stephen went and calculated what the amortization is on $6 million and just stick it into the general fund.
So now I'm back to that same question of what type of impetus do we need to get this thing so that instead of, oh shucks, we missed it, that we're actually standing at their door in February?
Well, you certainly are gonna need board approval for it.
Okay,
And then I'm assuming, Tony, you're gonna want audience comments on this as well.
That's correct, if the board authorizes. I guess the question is it more the board a consensus for Tetra Tech to prepare a task authorization to come back to the board, which would be, that would be the action item, so it'd be a sort of a consensus of today.
Right, so we would just want some direction on if that is the route you want to go, to do SRF funding for this, then we would need to prepare a task authorization to complete that facilities plan and do that design. So we would come back to you at a future meeting, I don't know, the next one or probably the following one, with a task authorization to do that.
Isn't the task authorization for SRF premature at this point, before we have a decent idea of what the dollar number is gonna be?
We could do that first if you like. We could put together a little bit more detailed cost estimate.
I'd certainly like that.
Okay.
But we can vote on a task for you to prepare that, can we not?
The cost estimate?
Yes.
I don't think you need a vote for that. We'll just-
Okay, I think it's just a consensus of the board that the.
Well, you're reading pretty good.
Yes,
Mr.
thank you.
Sampson.
So, yes, sir, we'll bring that back next meeting.
Thank you.
No problem.
Excuse me.
And what I think I would like to see is, I know we're talking about these first ponds for this phase, the phase 1, but can you also at least give us some indication of what we're looking for the next couple of phases on this? So,
But we have 500 acres of ponds, times 6,000, that's $3 million.
okay.
And that's not including any soft costs nor FPL cost.
I think it's maybe less than that, based on the scale of work you're gonna end up doing, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I think it's probably gonna be less than that.
And we do have some ponds that already have aeration.
Yes, ma'am, you do. You have quite a few.
All right. Thank you.
So we're ready to go on to the next item?
The only other item I had is, back to Tony again, is that we're going to be pre-bid meeting next Thursday. Do we have any answer from WCI on the easements on those 2 flowways?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. We'll just tell them right now that I guess they'll have to use the current access over on 132
I would say that.
and have their all-terrain vehicle. That's all I had.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, the second person is Kathleen Flaherty. she'd like to discuss update on the landscape committee.
Right. Kathy Flaherty from Landscape Committee. Last time I was here, you asked about the vacancy. Okay, we still have a vacancy and when it was sent out, and I did receive a copy, I asked for a copy, of when that email was sent out. It was sent out July 1st, so there was a copy. And you also asked about that easement, that chain across from, in near Gateway for FDL, and it has not been put on yet. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're finished with the public comments, starting on committee reports, 3A. Pelican Reserve Committee meeting minutes. Is there anyone here representing Pelican Preserve this evening?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Would you come to the podium and identify yourself, please?
My name is Nancy Olson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, you've hopefully read the Pelican Reserve Committee meetings minutes of July 14th and July 22nd. Are there items in either one of these that you would like to discuss at this time?
Yeah, I would. But I don't want to go first. Margaret may have some, Doug may have some.
I don't have
Margaret?
Go right ahead, Gary.
Well, how about Pam? Pleased to meet you.
Gary, I want to clarify, are you talking strictly about the minutes, or are you going to get into see the Pelican Preserve report?
I'm going to get into all of that.
Well, aren't we fortunate? Go ahead.
Oh, this is just going to be peachy keen. Steve, fire that sucker up shortly. All right, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions,
Okay.
and I'm going to go into some other things, not trying to put you on the spot. Know that this is
Okay.
your first meeting here. Thank you for everything that you're doing. It's greatly appreciated by the residents, all right?
Okay, I'll try not to run.
Don't, absolutely do not.
Okay.
Nancy, on item number 4, financials, just a point of clarification, and Stephen also, when it comes to financials, he's definitely got your back. The first sentence, it talks about the $42,000 audit adjustments, et cetera. Is this, and this is a question, is this the adjustment due to the Cypress Grove situation or something different?
No, this is a result of the certified audit that is conducted annually.
Okay.
And they found expenses that hadn't been charged properly to
Okay,
us.
so it isn't that. Good.
No.
All right, thank you for that. Item number 6, the road and pond contract. Film Easy states that April and Tyler are composing a letter for David Caldwell of WCI, informing him of WCI's responsibility in this regard. My question is, what's the status of the letter? And if there is a status, when are we going to get a copy of it so we can take a look at it? Apparently, you guys didn't read the minutes. Okey dokey.
And I wouldn't know the status of that either.
All right, well,
Other than that-
again, you're innocent on this one. He finger points at April and Tyler, so. I see Tyler writing a note, okay.
I think what they may be referring to, I know they're calling it a road and pond contract. I assume they're talking about the tract L conveyance, which we're discussing later on tonight.
Okay.
So I think that may be what he's referring to, because I'm not aware of any road and pond contract, so
All
I
right.
think that's what they're
So,
talking about.
we're talking about Tract L, so Cypress Grove.
And I think that is correct. I think that's what WCI came to the last meeting and discussed, that they were going to, that they were going to go ahead and inspect to make sure everything was okay before we did the conveyance.
That's been done.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's what they were talking about in that.
Okay.
Well, I think WCI stepped forward and agreed to do it, so maybe it never got to the point where he had to
We're
write.
just talking about the letter from Mr. Caldwell about.
That's what we're getting to, I believe, April.
Oh,
So they're gonna
Okay.
assume that,
we did receive that letter, but that wasn't from us to him, that was from him to us.
There's an awful lot of incomplete sentences. Could somebody give me a complete sentence that I understand what's? what
I
you're
will be
doing?
happy to do that. The permit criteria manual, at the time Track-L was started, did not include video recording of the sewer piping and other things in Track-L. The Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee felt that it was very important to have that video recording, and was preparing to pay for it out of their funds, Pelican Reserve O2 funds. David Caldwell, representing WCI, attended this meeting 2 weeks ago and offered for WCI to not only prepare video conferencing, videotaping, to pay for it, and to correct any issues that were discovered as a result thereof.
Correct.
At that meeting, I asked David Caldwell to prepare a letter to that effect and send it to me. That letter was received yesterday, I believe, and copies were sent to Bob Gephardt, Phil Maisy, and our attorney. Have
Yes, I had the letter.
spoken in complete sentences for you, Mr. Duval?
That would be nice. That was good.
I was
And
trying-
I would imagine
I
there's
was
other
trying to
people in the
speak
audience that.
complete sentences for you.
You know, I didn't know.
Did I can?
That's a little bit tough. No, that's good. Any reason why the board didn't get a copy of the letter so that we're aware of it, since each
You-
one of us is a vote?
Well, you were aware of it because of what David said last week, and we.
I'm more concerned with the receipt of it,
Well, we just got it yesterday.
but if you sent it to them, then you could have sent it to us.
Well, I will send it to you.
That'd be nice. We appreciate
Do
that.
you have anything else for Nancy?
Oh, God, yes. But this one, in another item that was there, and this crisscosses with Stony Brook.
Nope. What number are we on, please? Pond and-
We're still on 12, but we're at the last item.
Oh, we're on 12? Oh, I'm missing.
Page 9, item 12. And I see Joe is here, so that's good. This thing regarding the background checks for those people that are the privacy staff. We don't call them security, we call them privacy. There's a thing here about $500 a month to the association. Joe, what have you found to be the cost for these background checks?
Mr. Newbar, just for clarification.
I know.
No, that reference to $500 per month is not related to the access control or the privacy or security aspect.
Who is that?
That relates to a request by the council for the Property Owners Association that they be paid $500 a month to administer that contract. That's the operations and maintenance contract.
You requested that?
No, they did. The association's council did, but it's unrelated to the security matter.
Well, they have that in theirs, and it's also mentioned later in the minutes regarding the cost for security, and it escalates in one of these things upwards into the multiple thousands of dollars.
Shall I go?
Could you please? Because we kind of surprised Stony Brook with that.
Joe McCulca, Chairman of the Stony Brook Gateway Advisory Committee. At this point in time, we have not run into that kind of expense, but I would like to take this opportunity, because I was not at the meeting when this was
Okay.
recommended, that I did look into it with our, I won't use security company, but our protection or privacy company, that they actually are held to a higher standard. The state of Florida actually did something right some years ago, and because there were over 80,000 licensed security people of various levels within the state of Florida, and they have to review these licenses. The licenses are renewed every 2 years. In fact, they got an agreement with the FBI that the state of Florida, the security companies within this state, actually have the background clearance that a policeman would have. It passes through the FBI, which is higher than the level 2 that you had recommended, and that happens every 2 years. In addition to that, at that status, if in fact a guard or security person breaks a law, does a misdemeanor, or does anything, it gets reported right back against that license. It's a very high standard. I'm not really sure the annual is truly necessary, but it is what it is. So if this could be a moot point if you wanted to change that.
Okay, because I was trying to draw a parallel, because then it was talking also later about Pelican Preserve, and since the two are kind of joined at the hip, sooner or later, there's gonna be Hampton Park and yada, yada, yada.
Understood. Let me just say that our board did review it and discuss it. We did discuss it with Alert. They explained to us the standards they have to meet, and we felt it not necessary, and our attorney did not feel necessary to have any additional expenses to administer this. So we will meet the standards, but I question whether, because we're already exceeding them effectively.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. So it's been mentioned regarding the turnover of tracked out. When do you want to get
Yeah, I guess
into
I'm not.
the request by the advisory committee?
Later.
Okay. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Okay.
Are there other items to discuss regarding the Pelican Preserve committee minutes of either July 14th or 22nd? No? Okay, there's a Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee report of for September 1st on page 18 of your agenda. And they are asking our approval on following projects. One is to install 2 new trellises, make needed plant replacements, install LED bulbs, paint double yellow striping on the bridge, purchase new control panels for the upgrade of the access control system. And these 2 projects were included in the preliminary budget and moved forward. There is one item that I want to discuss in detail, and that is the painting double yellow striping on the bridge on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. If someone else wants to start that discussion, I would be happy to listen to them. Otherwise, I will
love to
begin.
I'd love to finish the argument. Go ahead.
There are certain people in the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee and probably the Safety and Security Group that believe they can take it upon themselves to paint upon a public road that is owned by this Gateway CDD and inside the city of Fort Myers. They have done that previously by putting bicycle markings on, and we have been having conversation on that item for the better part of 18 months. Now they are proposing to do some more painting on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. And I believe that any painting on any public road in the city of Fort Myers owned by this CDD should have approval by the city and be done by the city. And that painting on public roads by quasi-public organizations is not appropriate, and I would move to strike this item from the report.
Is the bridge, or you're talking about the bridge is included in that?
Now, they're gonna,
The county-
paint on the bridge, yeah.
Okay.
There's a second to my motion to strike this item.
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you.
'Cause
You-
I
You
did-
want,
I
you want to
did-
continue discussion?
Yeah, I did see your email, and I think that there was some desire to have a meeting with the city and the CDD, and perhaps yourself. And I don't see any reason why that shouldn't go forward. That's probably a good idea to make sure that everybody's in agreement that this is okay.
The meeting, you mean?
Mm-hmm. To schedule that
Well,
meeting.
we're gonna talk about that in a few minutes, I think, Margaret. But I don't,
So you're not against painting the lines, you just think that before that happens, the city we need to make sure we're adhering to any city guidelines, and they should be the facilitators.
I don't feel qualified to answer that question in the affirmative. I know I am not a professional traffic engineer, and I don't know anybody that is in Pelican Preserve. And I respectfully object to anybody painting anything on our public roads without the city of Fort Myers agreeing to it and doing the work, if possible, in advance.
Okay.
My turn?
Please.
Good. Stephen, again, the file is September 1st, 2016. And in there, you will find one that says golf cart issues. If you bring that up on the screen, please.
Okay, within there's two files. Both of them?
September 1st,
I'm there.
2016. Okay, let's start with the one that says, and let the supervisors also see what's going on here so that the audience and the supervisors are
Okay.
looking at
It's
the
a
same
full,
thing.
it's,
if you
yeah,
could.
there's two files in here. One says, number one, letter to editor, number
Yep.
two, letter to editor. Okay.
No, letter to editor will come second, the other one.
Okay.
Just a quick question while Gary's pulling it. Is the P-PAC Safety Committee not aware that that's county property? Was that something they were not aware of? Or are you contradicting that, Gary? You mean, I can hold, I'm
It's a
just
city
curious.
property.
Okay, I'll hold.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Very much so. This is kind of multifaceted, so please bear with me. In answer to your question, I'll get to it very briefly. This is the email that was sent out to the board, and everybody can see the people that it was addressed to. That it was forwarded by April, but it was created by Bill. That Mr. Guy has requested I forward the communication as usual, please do not reply, yada, yada, yada. And where Mr. Guy says, please send this to all board members, to Tony and Danny. And it talks about the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee, and you saw that in the book. And it was a proposal, defined proposal. Wasn't an instruction, it was a proposal that was coming to the supervisors. But more importantly, Bill responds, the P-PAC refuses to acknowledge they cannot authorize painting. They didn't say authorize, that word was never used, but Bill did. On public roads without the approval of the city of Fort Myers as well as this body. So we now sit as this imperial body that we make all these decisions. The Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee is comprised of people that have lived in the Pelican Preserve community for a gazillion years, just like me and just like Bill. They know that the ins and outs of the road and spend an awful lot of time handling a lot more things and giving a lot more volunteer time than the big bucks that we're making sitting up here on the board. Bill then puts in, I intend to vote against this request and ask for your support of this action. So here we've got an item that Bill's already telling the rest of the board how they're supposed to vote.
That's not right. I told them how I
No,
intend
this
to
is-
vote and requested. that
Oh,
they
so you're
support.
requesting us how to vote, so you're trying to give us this, and even before the item appears before us. In my opinion, that just crossed the lines of the sunshine law, and it didn't just cross it and isn't stepping on the middle of it, it stepped way off to the side. You went too far,
Yeah.
way
Tony,
too far.
opinion on that? I'd like to hear Tony's opinion on that.
Based upon some Attorney General's opinion and including informal opinion of January 22nd, 2009, to the Hallandale City Attorney, the question in that opinion was that, the question was whether a city council member may publish his anticipated vote on an issue before the city council to the public on an internet blog or in a newspaper with copies to his fellow council members, and if so, whether the other members of the council may also do so. The Attorney General indicated that if a memorandum reflecting the views of a board member is circulated among the other board members, if other board members are indicating his or her approval or disapproval, then it's a violation of the Sunshine Law. Attorney General Opinion 01-21, I'm quoting from this Attorney General's opinion again, said this office, the Office of the Attorney General, stated that while this office would strongly discourage such activity, it would appear that a city council member could prepare and distribute a position statement to other council members without violating the government and the Sunshine Law, so long as the council members avoid any discussions or debate among themselves on the statement. And that was reiterated in a subsequent Attorney General's opinion. So I think the caveat that was in the cover email, and that there was no communication, that in my opinion, it does not constitute a violation of the Sunshine Law, that one-way communication.
Thank you.
Okay, let's bring that back up again.
Hey, Gary, what's the direction? What do you, I'm not sure I'm following you.
No, there's
What?
a couple of things, because then I'm gonna go into this thing that, the next part of this is number 2, to meet with the city of Fort Myers and others to at last determine what the rules are. I ask no action be taken until our attorney, again, directing. Our attorney can speak and advise on this issue. At least we should have the names of those who are planning to attend this meeting. And then he states, when was Mr. Neubauer, hi, that's me, authorized to represent us? Never, ever, never was my name even mentioned in this. And the person who created this proposed meeting with the city of Fort Myers happens to be Carol Brocky, who happens to be the president of the Alliance. I wasn't any part of it, and what triggered this is the fact that they asked for Tony Pierce to be there to try to get this thing so that it was legally agreed by both parties so that it could be presented in that manner by the board. Bill, on the other hand, regarding this thing of the bike lane, which, by the way, the painting of the bike lane was there when he moved in, when I moved in, when Carol Brocky moved in.
Not so, not so.
Excuse me, wrong. And if you don't believe it, drive down Cypress Grove and take a look at the bike lane that's been painted on Cypress Grove. And by the way, we don't own Cypress Grove, so it's obvious the only party that could have put it there is WCI. For your information, yours truly came here because of WCI. I was brought here from New Jersey by WCI, and the moment that I drove in that community, that bike lane was there.
What? You go ahead.
So, no, we're taking this, Bill takes it upon himself to do that, and in addition to that, instructs our staff to go out there and to power wash those medallions off, and then also does damage to the surface of the road. What they're trying to do is, Bill has a personal interest in this, a very personal interest in it.
Well, Gary, I guess the point is, are you against this, are you against there being a meeting with this? a
Of course
meeting?
not. What I'm
So-
against is, first of all, anybody trying to tell us how we're supposed to vote, or even indicate to us how we're supposed to vote. Let me finish my sentence. And the fact that he's already naming people and questioning who was there, that weren't even there. It's this, just a minute, who took the strawberries type of routine. We've got to stop this. We've reached a point where now we're going so far with one person's determination to do things like this, that he is creating and casting the shadow for everybody else that sits on this board. On the other hand, if the rest of you all agree that this is appropriate behavior, then that's your agreement, but it sure isn't mine
Are you finished?
with this part. Yes.
I have rebuttal, of course, but I want to let other members of the board make statements or questions.
My only question is to try and move this whole thing along is perhaps we should consider taking each one of these and voting whether it's okay for them to take place, leave the yellow striping of the bridge for the final item, and then decide if the meeting should take place, because I'd like to move this stuff along so that we don't get stuck on this forever.
There is a picture, there is another file that's there, that there is a picture of this part. One says safety and Cypress Grove issues, Stephen. If you go to picture number.
Wait, no. And, we're gonna have further discussion on this before.
Okay.
I'm not gonna allow you to sit there and say nasty things about me, and talk, and let the board think that what you have just said is correct. I have in my hand the minutes of the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee dated January 15th, 2015. At which time a decision was made to paint bicycle markers on the Pelican Preserve Boulevard, and that it needs to cost $475. There will be 5 markers on each side, and it was approved 3-2. This is January of 15. That's when the markers were put on that lane, which previously had been unmarked, which originally was a lane for the golf carts, because Pelican Preserve is a golf cart community. That is not to say that bicycles could not use that lane, but when you put bicycle markings on that lane, you restrict that lane to bicycle use. And I feel that the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee neither had the authority to do that, and I have written information to that, to support that, from Caracas Engineering Division, City of Fort Myers. It says, a committee does not have the authority to make changes to the transportation ordinance of the City of Fort Myers of statutes of Florida. I have got so much to read to you about this that it would make your head swim.
Hey,
And
hey,
almost,
hey, Bill,
almost
is
none
it-
of it supports anything that Mr. Newbauer said.
Is it possible that I think there's a little bit of conflict of interest in this conversation, because both of you represent Pelican Preserve. This is a Pelican Preserve
I
issue.
represent the
I know.
entire Gateway
I-
Services CD.
And that's, all I'm saying is is there an opportunity to take this back to PPAC, have this conversation within that environment, and come back with a recommendation? Or is there an action we need to take on? I really don't want you guys to go back and forth in this issue, because for one, it puts us in an uncomfortable position, and two, mean, we're wasting quite a bit of time without any action.
I-
With all due respect to
I-
both of you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just make one statement for the record, to clarify, in my opinion, based upon the facts as I know them now, I'm not aware of any conflict of interest for either you or Mr. Newbauer to be discussing this issue. That's a term that has a significant legal
Well, you
significance,
can
Mr.
substitute
Banks, that's
that
why-
with
That's why I wanted to make sure.
invested personal interest or
Okay.
whatever.
Thank you.
I just like to move forward.
All right, well, in
I tried.
quick rebuttal, it isn't a personal interest in my particular case. I just want it to be out there, and I don't have any other person that's associated with me that is the one that's kind of helping drive, nor have I sent any letters to editor or any such animal. Having said that, as far as the yellow striping is concerned, it was something that was put in as a suggestion and a proposal. It was not something that they have made the decision to do. Secondly, the definition of that 4-foot lane. The 4-foot lane was put in by WCI in 2001 for Pelican Reserve Boulevard. The markings, as far as the bike lane is concerned, yes, that was done at a later time. And last but not least, regarding that, Bill also neglects to put in the fact that the DRI specifically says there has to be a dedicated bike path for all residents to get to all parts of the community via bikes, and that's why it was marked that way. But what they're trying to do now is to go with this thing where I've been named in this email that he sent out. They're trying to go and meet with the city. They want the approval to have Tony be there, so that Tony can be representative of us without any personal type feelings, and that they can try to come to the bottom of this and finally come to the correct delineation of what's gonna be where. So I think it should be, remove the two of us out of this, because we'll never agree. And let Tony be the one that represents the board as a professional and move forward with that. And that's what they're asking.
What you're conveniently omitting is that we have an item in front of us where the committee requests the board's approval for the following projects: install new trellis, da-da-da-da, and paint double yellow striping. I made a motion to remove that, and I have a second.
Okay, there, that striping, by the way, that you said that you've got Carl Caracas, which you reverted to, the bike lane, Mr. Caracas has met with the safety committee. Mr. Caracas has gone to that location that I have pictures of and wanted to show the rest of the board, that is a dangerous type of situation, and it's what was left with the community, and the community is gonna be the one that's going to have to pay the freight to try to get that in a safer type situation. But you don't want me to show that to them, so we won't show that to them until maybe later.
So it sounds like if we can vote on the items, minus the road striping until that is reviewed with the meeting with the city, and I'm fine with Tony representing, unless any other board members have any issues with that, and then we would table that item until a later date when the results come back after the meeting. And I would try to expedite that meeting because there could be safety or liability concerns.
Well stated.
I'm hearing a motion to table. Is there a second to the motion to table?
Yeah, I think Mr. Banks was suggesting tabling just the item on the.
Well, there's a motion on the floor that says to strike that item. If-
Correct.
Remove
That's
it
the
from
motion
the
that you moved
To
to
remove
table.
it.
Okay, just wanna make
And
sure.
I would just, I would amend the amendment to say table, to table that item until the meeting has been conducted and there's a recommendation from the city.
All right, no. That's a compound motion. I want to get it straight.
May I?
Just, hold on, just one second. I just wanted to ask the maker of the motion, are you moving to table just the item?
One item.
On the yellow striping?
Yes, sir.
All right, a motion to, has that been second?
Well,
Do I have a
the
second?
motion, yeah, okay.
Do I have a second for a motion to table?
Of course you do.
I do not. Who?
Yeah.
I haven't heard it.
Heller, yes, second.
Motion to table is a preferential motion that has to be voted on immediately without further debate. All in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that item has been pulled and tabled out of this recommendation from the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee. Now, we have to revert to the main motion where the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee asks for our approval to install trellises, make needed plant replacements, yada, yada, yada. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Say again?
Motion to approve.
Maeve's motion.
You're
to-
speaking of the other four
The other
items.
four
I
items.
am indeed.
Exactly.
I will second, I have a question for our financial advisor.
Stephen.
Yes, Stephen.
Yes.
Okay, there are funds adequate enough to cover all these items if they're moved into the 2016 budget year?
Yes, there are.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All in favor of the motion to approve the balance of these items, say yes. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Okay.
All right. Where are we here? Oh, we're gonna talk about the traffic control agreement later when the attorney gives his report. Is that okay with you, Tony?
Yes, sir, and also the authorization to participate in the meeting with all the various stakeholders on the city of Fort Myers and the traffic issue.
That's what I
So
was referring to.
There's two parts to that, I guess. Well, there's two parts to traffic agreement. And I would suggest that Tyler Wainwright also be authorized to participate in that from an engineering perspective, because I heard something today that, again, if one engineer has indicated we have a dangerous condition, the district has to either warn people of that condition or correct the dangerous condition. But the like authorization, and I think it's in the PPAC report, to attend and participate in the meeting and reflected at page 19 of the agenda. Representatives of the city, Gateway, the district, WCI, the Residents Alliance, and PPAC, Safety and Working Group, as well as Tyler Wainwright. So that's one item.
So do you want the motion?
Yes,
for-
please.
To have you and Tyler?
Yes, please.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Yes. No, Pam's got it.
I think everybody
Good girl,
seconded
Pam.
Do you want me to flip a coin on that one?
I have a motion.
Give it to the power
A
lady.
motion and a second. Is there conversation?
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0.
I will contact Mr. Gardner and advise him, because Bob called me last week about this.
All right, now you have a second part for us there?
Yes, just real briefly, on page 18 at the bottom, page 18 of the agenda at the bottom, it says I've submitted a draft traffic control agreement. Just like to clarify that I've sent emails to Grant Early's office, the city attorney's office, asking them for the suggested template and forwarding to him prior emails that received from Mr. Measy indicating that the board, Mr. Measy had met with the then interim chief, Eads, and that the Board of Supervisors authorized entering into the traffic control agreement. I received an email from Grant's Alley's office today that they would be working on and getting back with me shortly. So I'll just keep nudging him every 2 weeks or so. I send a little nudge gram to Grant. He's a good guy and a good lawyer, so.
Questions of the attorney about that item?
No, and just, I don't want to dig up something we've already buried, but when you meet with the city around the Pelican Preserve issue, do we have any other outstanding items that could be addressed during that meeting? Just
I would suggest we just focus on the traffic issue, because I think that's a big.
Well, I'm just saying,
Transportation.
if there is something else that, again,
'Cause
we can
really-
pay you once for.
Yeah. Only Pelican Preserve is really in the city
Okay,
limits.
and that's fine,
so-
and if knows the answer, knows the answer. I was
I'll
just
bring that-
curious.
Good thought.
I can
Okay.
imagine first, probably be the first half hour getting the seating chart. After that, we'll have
Well,
a
that's why we're sending
conversation,
you,
I'm sure.
hopefully move that meeting along. Okay, thank you.
I'm fine sitting anywhere at the table, but, thank you.
All right, maybe we move on to the Stony Brook meeting minutes of July 13th, starting on page 22 of our agenda.
Once again, Joe McCulker, Stony Brook Chairman from the Gateway Stony Brook Advisory Committee. I don't have anything specific beyond the minutes. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them.
What's this thing about the crosswalks that Kathleen, I think, was asking about? The striping,
The pave.
That's something that is in discussion, the crosswalks, and in fact, we did add some extra money to the budget, as I recall, for that specific purpose. And that was that our crosswalks, not so much across Pebblebrook, but our side streets that meet Pebblebrook, have not been painted since they were originally done by Lennar, and they're due. So we just wanted to handle that, that's all. And we're asking Gateway possibly to, and we're going to contact the company that did the paving, and they recommended somebody to contact for getting a quote on that.
PMI, is that?
PMI did the paving, they used somebody else, and who I don't recall off the top of my head who did the
Okay,
crosswalks.
because that's the one that was mentioned.
Yep.
Okay. Why is somebody in this other part, J.T. Thomas, update FP&L, Margaret, FP&L, somebody, they talk about in one place that Anchor trimmed the trees, but then somebody else says that there's another tree, and the homeowner has to correct that.
Well, we have, along our main boulevard, as I believe in Pelican, there are no homes that face Pebblebrook. And in effect, Anchor does Pebblebrook. The homes, the trees that are along the side streets are actually on homeowner property. They're not on Gateway property or common ground. And we do require that they maintain those trees. And there was a period of time that Elle and I think it was Scott at the time, I don't think it was you, actually had someone come in and look at our property and suggest that the trees should come up where they hang over the road. And then the recommended guideline was 14 feet, and she suggested, though, that 12 was acceptable. And we have a policy in our community to keep it at 8 feet over the sidewalks. Now, since those trees are on the homeowner's property, and some homeowners do maintain and some don't, we've had a policy, we just send letters out, and that becomes a finable offense if they don't conform. And in effect, that's how we have controlled it in the past. This particular incident of the tree that was blocking the stop sign, a letter had already gone out, but we, after hearing about it at that particular committee meeting, I did speak to our CAM, who called the individual up and apologized and had the tree trimmed the next day. So it's been handled.
Okay. So, in other words, it's just one big happy master association, rather than like in Pelican Reserve, all our sub-associations.
Well, fortunately, we're not a golfing community.
Trust me, Joe, it's got nothing to do with golf. But
I understand.
Any other questions for Joe on Stony Brook? Thank you
No.
very much.
Thanks, Joe.
The meeting minutes will be part of our board minutes. All right, consent agenda. 4A, approval of the July 21st, 16 minutes financial report, confirmation of the audit engagement, and report from the operations manager. Let's only do items 4A, B, and C on the consent agenda and leave the report of the operations manager so she can discuss it with us personally. I have a motion to,
No,
I'm sorry?
I have some questions on
Well, yeah,
the 21st.
well,
On the
then we'll do item 4A. Sir?
Tell me, Chairman, but on 4C, I know I'm not a member of the board, I don't have the ability to pull something up, but I have some additional language I want to discuss to be added to the engagement letter with Burger Tunes, if I may. I apologize.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
When we get to that, you'll certainly have
Thank-
plenty of opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Newbauer, you want to talk about July 21st minutes, is that correct?
Page 28,
Thank
starting
you.
with 28. It indicates that the Lee County Sheriff's Office has a program called Celebrate Safe Communities we're interested in, and so what's happened with that? As an event is scheduled, 2 HOAs neighboring the park, communities surrounding the park will be included. Did that take place? Will it take place?
Sure.
And it was underneath
the,
your
Well,
domain.
yeah,
The community
where
program.
was that?
Page 28.
April White, your operations manager. The Safe Community initiative was discussed. We had a meeting, and what we had decided at that meeting was that the better event for that would be the movie event over at the soccer complex, because there's a lot more opportunity for us to have more time before the movie to actually invite a lot more vendors to come in to address that particular initiative. We were trying to, the actual Crime Prevention Month is October, but that interfered with our fishing tournament, and staff is already geared up working on the holiday event. So we all agreed that it would be a more effective initiative if we could have it in February, adjacent to our movie event.
So this sounded like it was something that was in conjunction with the fun park and the problems and getting the communities involved, and that's not what it is?
Right, so that's where it started out at, and we had several constraints that we had discussed at that meeting. One of the constraints was parking, the other constraint was no facilities. There were several there. I don't have the notes from that particular meeting in front of me. But there was a good discussion on it, and we all agreed that it would be more effective for the community at the sports complex in February.
Okay, and then line 81. Ms. White continues to research the camera options. Where are we at?
Can we leave that for Ms. White's
Operations update.
manager
Do
report?
you have any corrections to the minutes?
If we have corrections to the minutes, now is the time to do it. If not, we want to approve the minutes and get going. Motion to approve the minutes of July 21st, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any other conversation? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0. Okay, let's then do the financial report for July. Steve, would you help us do that, please?
Sure. Stephen Bloom, Severn Trent. Switch pages there. It starts on page 37. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to do a top-level overview, just kind of some of the brief points that we talk about. First is collections for assessments. Right now, overall, you're at about 99%, and in some places better in terms of collection of your assessments. Let's see the quick page on that. Page 78 it has a chart that shows, and we'll still receives a little bit of money as as the years goes up. Some of these people now at this point are delinquent, but being 99% is good. And I believe in one place it's even a little more. In terms of spending, and when you look across the funds, all the funds are doing very well. I'm just going to quote some really brief numbers again to kind of talk very top level. General fund, 65% in terms of the percentage of your budget. And again, this is through July, so you're about 43. So you're about 83% of the way through your budget. So obviously what you want to always be is under that straight line type of a percentage. So it's good to be at 65%. Some of that is some line items where when we did the budget, we put in some money for some possible conveyances, and those haven't occurred, so you got some savings there. Other places is just some good spending control in terms of line items. And then there are some places, we've talked about repair and maintenance in the past, where you are kind of over your year-to-date budget, and some places over your annual budget. But overall, when you look at these funds in total, and you can keep moving to page 48, Pelican Preserve is at 74% of their total budget, and that's even with the additional spending that we have put in there for pond banks, and they're still at 74%. And looking at the enterprise fund, because that's another place that we kind of like to take a look at the revenue, and we talk a little bit about rate studies. That is page 59. One of the things I always like to mention and talk about is to take a look at where our revenue is year-to-date versus where it was last year at this time. So last year at this time, through July, you're at 3.75. And that included over 600,000 of connection fees. This year, you're at almost 3.9 with about 580,000 of connection fees. So, connection fees, putting that aside because you really can't control that. When you look just at the revenue line items, water revenue, you're 90,000 favorable, irrigation 2,400, sewer 67,000, and the only thing where you're actually unfavorable is penalties, which is actually a good thing. So all in all, when you look at where your rates are and kind of the growth, it is, again, it's a good sign to see your revenue growth, and that's kind of what we expected when we put in the rates were put in. Spending, same thing. You're at about 65%. And kind of note, when you talk about growth, you can look at the meters and supplies line, which even though it is, well over now, your budget, again, that's another sign of growth when you're having to put in more meters. So kind of in summary, everything does kind of look good through July.
Thank you. Questions for Steve? Motion to accept the financial report for July, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I have motion and second. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Next is the confirmation of the audit engagement with Berger Toombs to perform the fiscal year 16 audit. It sounds as though our attorney has the floor on this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for late providing my suggested language to the board and to Stephen and Ken and April. I'll give that language to them this morning. At page 82 of the agenda, in the proposed retainer agreement, there's a paragraph, the fourth full paragraph, where Berger Toombs is part of the engagement letter, and there's language that the district will hold harmless and release them from all claims, liabilities, losses, and costs arising in circumstances where there has been a knowing misrepresentation by a member of the district management, which has caused, in any respect, Berger Toombs breach of contract or negligence. And I would suggest that in order to have a valid provision, that we insert the language that's on the first page of this email at the little balloon, the yellow balloon, as indicated, that to the extent permitted by law and without waiver of the district's claim to immunity under section 768.28 Florida statutes, and without extending or altering the district's liability beyond the limits established in section 768.28 Florida statutes, and then it goes on. So I would suggest that if the board is inclined to authorize the chair to execute this engagement letter, that language be inserted as indicated. And Stephen, do you have any questions or follows with that language?
No, I do not.
Mr. Attorney, have you or anyone spoken to the accounting firm about this?
I have not had that opportunity.
Do you expect any complaints from them?
I
about
would
it?
hope not. Stephen, do you expect any complaints?
I don't, but the board can approve it with these changes, and then if they do have an issue, we'll come back.
I think that's a perfect way to do it. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the confirmation of the audit engagement as amended by our attorney.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And I have a second. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. For D, report of the operations manager. April, can you help us here?
Do you want me to just run through everything, or do you have any specific questions?
I don't have any specific questions. Let's see what the members of the board would prefer. Any board member that wants to hone in on, yes, Mr. Dubau.
Well, you said I had to wait, so I waited. Now you said I could, so I will.
Please-
On
please
page
do.
29,
Oh, 29.
Page 29
29.
Let's go to the minute.
of the agenda?
Lines 119 through 121. Okay. Mr. Shoemaker, Chris, requested a cost proposal expenditure of $18,442, et cetera, and district staff will make sure all meters are installed correctly. I understand that there has been a letter sent out to the community, is that true, regarding
There's been-
something wrong with the meters?
There's been multiple communications to the customers regarding the results of the audit.
Do you have a copy of those letters?
Have we ever received a copy of that?
I'm hoping we can get one right now.
That'd be nice.
This is just 3 examples.
Could you summarize the 3 examples, please?
Thank you.
What we've been trying to do is address the audit findings in groups, depending on what the findings were, and kind of communicating in batches. We've been trying to prioritize what ones were the most, the ones that affect the billing the most, and address those first. And so Leslie's had probably, well, there's 3 examples here. And I did not capture from her exactly how many letters she has mailed out to the customers, but it's an ongoing process right now.
Is it 50, 100, 200, 500?
Well, if you wanted to drill down the results of the audit in numbers, there was 7,308 meters evaluated. 6,097 came out with no findings, so that leaves 1,211 meters and customer accounts that have something as a finding on the audit that we need to address as staff.
Say that number, how many? Did I hear 1,000 something?
1,211, and that's various issues, but just on a number summary, those are the things that staff is drilling down on, trying to figure out whether it's correcting something in the software, whether it's inputting an MIU number. I mean, there was various issues.
And this is just-
Meters not reading appropriately.
But this isn't equipment failure, right? Or is it? What is the scope of?
Chris could probably summarize some of the findings on the audit better than I can.
And that's fine. All I want to know is it could be billing, it could be system error, it could be equipment failure. It encompaces all that. The
Yeah,
1,000 encompasses
I think we
all
did have
areas.
equipment
Okay.
failure. They brought in a load of replacement equipment that they replaced
Okay.
while they were doing it.
Can we get Chris up here then?
Sure. Chris Shoemaker, Utility Manager, and
How you doing, big guy?
Good.
4,900 gallons, that's the first letter. 8,000 gallons. That sounds like an awful lot of water to me for one person to have as an error.
well, it depends on.
And then there's 1,000 plus of these, according to what April just said?
A number of them, they are not all specific to the billing issues. Some of those have to do with mechanical issues, broken lids, bad batteries. But there were a number of billing issues, and it's the best way to explain it. In some of those, you had the transmitter that was not reading quantity. So we were billing the base rate, which in some cases is hard to determine because you might have a seasonal person there and you think, oh, they're not using any water, they aren't here. But when they went out and did the audit and got everything working correctly, that totalizer that had the total number of gallons gave an accurate figure. So we had one customer we talked to, and they said, yeah, I noticed my bill was real low and it was only for the base. And we said, well, you know, over the time since that meter was installed, 60,000 gallons went through your meter. It's like 60,000 gallons is like, yeah, but that's 10 months. So,
So does our staff here have bulletproof glass now?
well, we had one fellow that said, well, if it took you 6 months to find the error, I'm gonna take 6 months to pay you. And we put together a payment plan for him, but in most cases, the people realized when we brought it to their attention that they weren't paying their full water bills, that they might have been only paying a partial or the base facility charge. So, it questions our confidence, of course, you know, when we talk to them, but for the most part, we haven't got a real bad reception about it, that when we explain it to people, and that's what we've been doing in the letter, and it's taken a little bit, because it's on a case-by-case basis.
Chris, are these bad quality meters? Is that the bottom line here?
No, the meters are good, but they had issues, whether it had been the battery or wasn't transmitting correctly, that all the data wasn't coming through. And that's what that audit discovered, is they checked every meter.
Well, when they do the install, don't they check that obviously there's flow, and then also check that the transmitter is working, or is that just crazy?
They're supposed to.
So
And-
somebody should compensate us for that, because again, it says, make sure, district staff will make sure all meters are installed correctly, and I would imagine correctly means that it's transmitting and it's correctly billing and et cetera.
Right.
And haven't we had that, I think we've had that discussion where there's still a final payment, and.
That's the next paragraph, sir.
And once we do the audit and we determine what potential loss or impacts, we would define that number and potentially withhold that amount back to them. And I think that might be where you're going.
Yeah, so if in fact the next paragraph, which names me again, what are we doing to keep track of this so that we have an accurate request to Ford Line or whoever it is that is reasonable, justifiable, and
Well, it's all documented, of course, with each of the customers' account. I'll have to say, besides the time involved in it, we haven't suffered any financial loss, because none of our customers have said, I refuse to pay this.
okay, but are we keeping track of this so that we have the data
Oh, yeah.
to present to them and say, listen, guys, you know.
Yep,
You're
and this
talking
is,
about present to Ford Line, correct?
Correct.
and this is part of that data.
All right, so you've got the big file, or April's got the big file?
We have a giant file.
Looks that way, Chris.
So-
All right, so,
I'm sorry. Are you fin- you're not fin-
did you know about this letter?
Not until yesterday.
Okey-doke.
I would have sent it to you.
I think we should have known. Thank you.
And we probably should have brought that to your attention sooner, and we were just trying to clean it up, looking at it as an administrative and clerical type thing.
Well, I would say in these cases, anytime there is items that pose, negative feedback from our residents or anything that we're gonna get a potential call for, this would be a nice to know in a memo or in a weekly update. Say, hey, these letters are going out, we found these issues, just be aware, because we would have been blindsided. Now, luckily, I didn't get a call, but that doesn't mean I won't.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but thanks, Chris.
Steven, now you have the
Chris,
answer.
I had one question for you. Some of these issues were bad batteries. What's the life expectancy of these batteries?
Well, the batteries are actually, I believe, about 15-year batteries.
Okay.
And when we asked them about that, and they had, a fellow from Zenner said, have you been storing these upside down? And I said, no, we don't store them, but during the installation process, they were stored at an off-site warehouse with ST. I can't tell you whether they were stored upside down, but because of that type of battery is if they are upside down, they tend to decharge rather quickly.
Or did we get a bad batch?
And like a computer, you could get 100 computers, you're gonna get 3 or 4 that are bad, but we did have a number of ones that had bad battery units. And
I just wondered. Thank you.
Anything else on that item? April, would you continue, please?
Hey, while you're pulling that up, because
I'm
something,
sorry?
no, while April's finishing up, Gary brought up when you're pushing back the community watch or awareness, whatever, to the movie night. You might want to consider maybe if we can get at least a booth set up for the holiday, because this Christmas tree lighting ceremony, it's a huge turnout, and that if we're looking to socialize, just be good, community citizens, be on the lookout for these things, just bring in awareness. We don't have to have a designated program, but I think crime prevention is a big enough issue that we could maybe just set up a booth, see if maybe we can get a share for somebody to just talk about that, bring awareness. It doesn't have to be a specific program, but that's a huge audience. There's a lot of people.
That's an excellent suggestion, and including the voice program, in case there's some folk within the community that would like to volunteer and drive around.
And even tell them there's more to come. We're going to have something in whatever month, but it's nice to have a lead in. You have to over communicate these types of things.
Perfect.
So just food for thought.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you continue, please?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So there was nothing specific that we wanted to ask about? Because I do have one question that I want to be sure that I get covered, and that was number 6 in the natural resources section.
Would you allow the board members to ask any questions that they have of you about your report, please?
Are there any questions, specific questions regarding the report?
Yeah, why don't you reiterate upon management needs direction on item number 6?
Okay, are we ready for that one? Okay.
Subtle intro and follow-up.
All right, on Lake 104, we're making some progress. The utility manager is assisting in this process. He's been doing a lot of customer relations, talking to the 2 neighbors involved with where we need to access Lake 104. And one of the issues that have come up in discussion is we've received an estimate for the plant removal that we need to do in order to get the equipment back to the bank. And that came out to be $1,235. With that, it brings the follow-up question: if we remove the plantings, is the district going to replant the plants and restore the landscaping?
Is it inside our easement?
It is in our easements and within their yards. Management, Chris and I have discussed, and Tyler, that we definitely want to, if we were to go in and replant anything, we definitely want to keep them out of the perimeter easement around the bank. There's definitely some landscaping down there that needs to be pushed back up the bank out of that area. However, if the district, is in the mindset to replace the landscaping, logistically, we have some issues that we would have to address. What type of landscaping are we going to replace it with? We can't replace it in kind as far as maturity, but is it going to be in kind as far as the actual species? Or we work out something and work with legal on providing a waiver for the neighbors to sign as far as the liability and the understanding that they're not to plant anything else there, and possibly just refund, provide some sort of reimbursement to them, or we don't put anything back. But, in some of the HOAs as we proceed with these projects, and I believe this particular HOA, they do require plantings on that easement. So I'm just trying to get a feel of what the board's appetite would be as far as how we're going to address 104, and also how we're going to proceed on the easements with the rest of the lakes.
Is that a conflict of the HOA
Yeah.
planning over the district easement process?
So the
Yeah,
person that came in and said-
in my opinion, when you have a easement, we have the ability, you can't have any interference with our easement rights and our easement. In my opinion, it appears that this interferes with our ability to utilize the easement for its intended purpose. And there might be some design guidelines, as I understand it, in that community that are not clear. I think it's implied in some aspects. I went through them all, and it doesn't specifically state that the homeowner should not plant any vegetation in any drainage easements. But I believe the district has the ability to say, we're removing it, it's interfering with our easement, and we have the dominant estate. And, you know, I don't know whether we'll get into a fight, or the homeowner will get into a fight with the HOA at a later point in time, but that's my opinion, that we have the ability to say we're not going to put any more vegetation in there. Or the board could say, we put low-level vegetation in there, that's not gonna interfere with the easement. But with recognition that it can come out in the future if we need to make any modifications or obtain access to the lake or engage in any reconstruction activities.
What kind of vegetation are we talking about? And how far in the easement is?
There's some cabbage palms that need to be taken out. We were looking at taking out the large oak tree that is right over the pipe
So it's
by
significant.
the street. You know, I mean, it would be a significant change to that yard.
So
Yeah,
we have
when you're
cost of
talking oak
removal.
trees- Yeah, when you're talking oak trees, they could damage the district's facilities easily.
Right.
They're
Right.
notorious for that.
If they haven't already.
Exactly, and that's why we're there. We want to make sure that we take that down, because right there in the front of the easement by the road, that needs to be our staging area where we need to dump the gravel.
And since this is our easement, I know that it's probably not gonna be a popular decision, but nothing ever should have been planted in the maintenance easement. It's why we're having problems getting access to the lake. It's there for a purpose, and the purpose is to be able to access the lake for whatever reason, to repair it, to check on it, to clean it, to whatever. So I would be against us replanting anything in these maintenance easements anywhere in the community.
Yeah, and for clarification, Margaret, it's a drainage easement. It's part of our drainage system. But
Right.
It's not characterized as a maintenance easement, but we have the ability to go in there, install, maintain, repair, reconstruct our drainage facilities.
So easements are easements, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Drainage
the word
easement.
maintenance doesn't show up as far as the
Yeah,
grant.
I understand.
But we can utilize it for maintenance, maintaining our drainage system, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, if we're not careful here, we're gonna be in a lose-lose situation. And I would request the board to authorize our manager and engineers to come up with a scope of how we're going to handle these situations, and let the homeowners know ahead of time what they're looking at, or what, so we don't surprise them. But we need well-reasoned methods, carefully thought out by our professionals and engineers, that we can then review and hopefully approve as a board, and send out ahead of time to our homeowners, or we're likely to be in a terrible situation.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you, Bill, that it's uncomfortable when we have to remove vegetation and plant from someone's property. I would be emotional about it. But we're gonna, with all the pond work that we're gonna have in the future, we're setting precedent here, and.
That's why I want it done right the first time.
But I don't know if it's, I mean, is it staff's recommendation, or is it simply we're gonna stick to,
I don't think we have the time or the knowledge of each one of these difficult situations. That's what we have staff and hire these engineers for, to look at these places and give us
but would we
a
treat,
manual.
would
so-
we treat them on a one-to-one basis? I think that might put us in.
Well, we might treat them on a one-to-one basis until we get a body of evidence put together, so we'll know exactly what we're dealing with. And I repeat, we need to notify these people ahead of time what they're looking forward to.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to I believe it's staff's position and the path of least resistance from a management perspective, as far as managing the project, is that we don't replant. If we have no obligation to replant and it encumbers our access, then not replant. My dilemma and what I'm trying to get is a general consensus of what the supervisors are gonna support and what they're not going to support, because this is a community, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Banks, is that it is an emotional situation. This is something that was probably done inappropriately from the beginning, and now, again, the supervisors and management has the burden of figuring this out. But I also wanna try to find, a means of applying our approach to each one of these issues fairly, objectively, and I think that's going to take buy-in from the supervisors. And so with 104, I think what we're looking for is whether or not you support us taking the approach that we're not going to replant, because that's what we're trying to devise. We're trying to devise written communication to these residents. We're trying to formulate a schedule of when we're gonna be able to get the contractor in to clear our path for us. We have to manage to get the contractor back in there and on schedule. And what we would like to do is tidy this up enough to where we have everything outlined. Everyone knows exactly what's going to be done, when it's gonna be done. The neighbors have been well notified. They've had a chance, an opportunity to communicate back to us. And then, be able to have a plan so they know what to expect and when to expect it. And so that's what we're looking for is, what do the supervisors support as far as this? I mean, this is a PR issue.
I mean, we make a decision on this, it sets precedent, and we need to make a decision so we can move forward. I think where the conversation needs to happen is, and I agree that we shouldn't be replanting. It's the easement, it's the way it should be, but I think we do need to pay some attention on how we leave that property. So if we remove plants, I think we probably need to pay a little bit of attention on, how much if it's a flower bed and we move something out and pull it back. I mean, I think the conversation or discussion is going to be, what would we do? Just, how do we leave that section? Do we sod it if we take a tree out? Do we, I don't know, but that's more my concern.
Well, your concern is well stated. My concern is we have agreed, I believe, to work on 13 ponds as quickly as possible. My belief, and I wish you'd correct me if I'm wrong, is that none of these ponds have been surveyed, and we don't know precisely where our easement is, and we haven't taken any pictures of those easements, and we're operating in the dark. And I don't think operating in the dark is the way we should proceed. I think we ought to have our engineers have each one of those properties surveyed, have our easement surveyed, and then have photos taken so we know precisely what it is that we have ahead of us.
All right, so,
Just a minute, I have recognized Margaret, please.
you've recognized her, I recognize her too.
I don't know that we need to go into that much detail. I don't think we should be looking at these on a case-by-case basis and deciding where we're gonna replant and where we're not gonna replant. If the easement hasn't been planted on some of these lakes where we're gonna go in and do the work, we don't have an issue with the drainage easement. And make it clear for Tony, because he wants me to call the drainage easement.
There might be some lake maintenance easements.
If
Our easements.
If the easements have been planted on, at some point in time, somebody did that in error. And I don't think it's our responsibility to replace what was planted in error. And then, let's say we need to go back and do more work on that lake, then what do? We rip out what we just put back in that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place? I don't think this is a case-by-case basis. I think we just need to decide what our policy is going to be about these easements and what's been inappropriately planted in them.
Again, I appreciate your statement, but I think that we are so new in this business that we need to survey those lakes and find out exactly where our easements are, photograph, and then come back to this board so we know precisely what it is we're doing.
We know where our easements are, don't we?
No, we don't. No,
Danny,
they've
could
not
you-
been
can you-
they've not
Danny,
been.
Can you come to the podium, please? Thank you.
For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech. Some surveying has been done just simply to collect data. We actually have on the agenda tonight the surveying to finalize so we can go for the design, and that will actually collect the data for the easement, the lake maintenance easement around the lake, as well as the access easement. So that will be before you tonight for approval.
So Dan, let me ask you a question. Is it possible that a homeowner or resident does not have any knowledge where the easement is, and they have made plannings in good faith, not knowing any better?
I would imagine that's probably the norm.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience has been people do not pay attention to the surveys, indoor title policies, they may not even.
Well,
Yes,
being
class.
ignorant is different than, you know,
Understand,
that's,
but-
to me, there's a little bit of a difference, but, okay.
Well, some of this is that the homeowners association has allowed this to happen. so
Or
they-
WCI at the outset may have required it.
Yes.
Contrary to,
That's the problem.
yeah, that's the problem. I think that's what's happening in this instance.
So, summary version.
Wait, well, hold on. Do you want to talk to us?
Well, sir, if I could briefly make a comment, because I was boots on the ground with a couple of the homeowners in Lake 104. And one property owner came out and said, well, this is the way I bought the house. It was all landscape. The fellow that lived here before was a landscape architect. He goes, this beautiful, mature landscaping is the reason I bought here, and it differentiates our community from other communities that have newer landscaping. There's a big, beautiful oak, a couple big palm trees in there. And the neighbor next door, the same thing. We really didn't know what it, we knew it was an easement, what it's for. It's always been planted since both of them bought the houses there. And they even came and asked me, said, well, we don't mind taking some of this out and that, but could we give you a little bit construction easement temporary in our yard and at least save this oak and these two huge palm trees, and then you can move? And I said, well, I'm not sure, because then in the future, what if we need to come in? Are you gonna give us another temporary, access easement? So I told them that to come up with their best plan, and I'd come back with them with a plan of what we can and can't do. And they said, well, what does it look like now? And I said, well, it looks like now legally we'll take our easement and clear cut it, we'll restore it, the sod, and make sure everything's smooth, and then we leave. And they said, what, leave it with nothing there? And I said, yeah.
Mr. Newbauer, did you have
Just
some?
in response to Chris and that particular party, they might be putting their house on the market tomorrow, and then we deal with the next person. So, like Margaret said, that's what I was saying, summary version. If you start making these one-on-one type of agreements, you're gonna perpetuate this to infinity. Bill's statement, thank you, God. Bill's statement is accurate in that we need to start getting the surveys done, coordinate, see that? We need to get the surveys done, we need to know the.
I resemble that.
And we're going to put that. We'll put a plaque on the wall for you, Bill. So we need to get that done. We need to have it clearly identified, we need to share it with the people. And yes, April and staff are the ones that are going to take the brunt of the flack, but at the same time, if we don't come up with something as a policy, which is what we really are supposed to be,
Yes.
then they have nothing to work with, and they're the ones that take all of the bruises. And if somebody has an objection, it ought to be to us, it shouldn't be to them.
Yep.
So, we need to be able to have that access And there has been a number of years that the lake maintenance hasn't been done, and you can throw in all of these other things. The planting shouldn't be there. The construction of things after the fact should be better watched. It isn't. So we need to create the policy very quickly. We need to get the surveys done immediately. Whatever Bill needs as far as if he wants to have photos taken by, and who will take them, a professional photographer, I don't know. But more importantly is the marking, are we gonna stake the boundaries? Okay, so we've got meets and bounds, we've got prominent indications of where, and yes, it's going to be there's gonna be that, so you're right, back to communication again. One of our biggest defects, every one of those people that's gonna be subjected to that, we should send them this form letter with their specifics on it.
Yes.
Or go out and knock
Well,
on
I-
the door.
We're gonna hear back, we're sure.
Yeah, however you do it, and I think we should let them know when the survey's gonna happen. We need to clearly stake it out and say you have X amount of time to relocate anything that you wanna save. But
Correct.
as of whatever date, we're gonna come through and we're gonna have to remove, unfortunately or regrettably, we're gonna have to remove this, and we're not replanting. And, I mean, as unfortunate as that is, I think that we have to take that stance.
All right, so can we move forward with some kind of policy
Yep.
here?
Not tonight, Gary. I
Well,
don't
you
think-
have to,
I
with
don't-
Lake 104, is it 104 or 128? 104. What, is this holding us, are we being held up?
Are we dragging our feet because of this?
Is there anything that,
Come on.
yes? We need a decision on this,
Correct.
yes? Okay, we need to make a decision on
Yeah,
104.
this is the lead follower, get
No.
out of the way.
I
So-
disagree with you. I think this is what we have professionals for. We're amateurs in this business. And we ought to have our
Policy.
professionals tell us how we should handle it.
With 104 and the high water, is the high water holding us up, or is this decision holding us up?
Both, yeah,
Both?
the high water is because we can't get in there
All right.
immediately, and it'll probably be about another month till the water's dropped enough where we can get in and work, but I'm trying to work with the homeowners now to come up with a solution, and let them know.
Come on.
And it's an emotional issue with those people.
And I understand that, and, you know, if somebody came in and they wanted to clear cut some of my trees, I'd be unhappy, but if I put them where they're not supposed to be, I'd have to take responsibility for that. And I know they supposedly bought their houses the way they are, and I agree with Doug, they have until a date certain that they can have anything moved that they want to have moved, like the palm trees, for instance. They're not gonna stay in the lake in the drainage easement.
In our easement.
So, they have until a time certain to have somebody come out and move those if that's what they decide that they wanna do, but I think it's a bad idea for us to replant any of these easements and then end up having to go back in and do it again, and then what are we gonna do, keep cutting down, replanting? That's not, we shouldn't make the rest of the community pay for that. They shouldn't have been planted, they've been planted. If they need to be removed for access, that's just the way it is.
So what do you need?
My question is, has that property been surveyed?
Yes. Yes, we have the surveys, we've marked out what we need to clear. So I think what would be helpful here for us to move forward is a recommendation from the board, a consensus, that we're going to approach 104 by exercising our rights and staying on our easement, clearing the easement, and we're not replanting. That's our approach for 104.
And give them time.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what we'll put in the notice, and that a direction to staff that we need to devise a policy that sets that as the parameters, and we bring that back to you with some of the additional information that we have from what Tetra Tech is going to provide, taking into consideration the accesses on the 13 ponds that we're moving forward with.
You want to say that again? No, I'm sure.
No, if we have a written policy, then you don't have to bring each and every lake to
Right.
us one at a time.
Absolutely.
And that, I don't wanna see that happening.
What we need as management for the policies is that gives us a direction, that gives us momentum, we can keep going. And it's something for us to hang our hat on that we know the supervisors support because we have an adopted policy.
Okay, so you can draft a policy, you know, and I would put give a date range, you know, notification by 60 days or whatever it is, but,
Well, wait a minute, is that time, the engineers?
well, she's gonna have to work with them to figure out.
No, the engineers are here, Tony's here, April's here. So they should be the ones that give us an idea of what the timing frame it needs to be, or we may have this going into next year. That all of this conveniently always gets dragged.
So from a policy perspective, in line with this work, how much time do we need to give residents, for one, after it's surveyed? So we need to get action on the survey immediately.
already
How
been
long have we been
surveyed.
talking to these people already?
Yeah, I don't know, and 104 is, I mean, this might be a little,
Are we talking about the one lake, or are we talking about them bringing a policy back to us?
Well, we're talking about, I think right now they need action on Lake 104.
So we have
Am I
direction.
correct?
So we've given you direction on what we've got a survey, we're in communication with the resident. We need to say, okay, we're gonna stake out, you have X amount of time in order to relocate, but the policy that we're establishing is based on this precedent that we're gonna have to remove anything that's on our easement and we will not replant. And you need to build a policy off this precedent.
Well, I'll tell you from the standpoint of, we know from what Chris just said is we're looking at 30 days, you know, before the water levels. We anticipate the water levels going down before
Okay.
we want to get in there. 30 days is ample time for notification for vegetation to be removed. And they may choose not to remove it, at which case you would then remove it.
Well, 30 days
I
is,
don't think they're going to.
I don't know if I'd consider that ample, but it would,
No, definitely.
because you're gonna have to get some bids, you're gonna have to schedule.
It depends on what we're talking about. If it's
just
trees.
some flowers and stuff,
right,
you know,
then-
whatever, okay. But,
Well, I think that, I don't think the homeowner is going to remove anything.
and if they don't, we do it. I mean, you only remove something if you wanna keep it.
I don't know why we would even ask them to.
Because
to
it's the right
remove
thing to do. If you've got a
It's
tree
not
or something
their
that's expensive and you don't want us to tear it down,
Okay.
Well, I
they
mean,
should
you
get
could
the
ask them if they wanted to say.
They've been working on this for how many days, weeks?
I think it's
Months.
Yeah.
They've been working on this a month already. There's already communication. The focus is on this one right now.
Yep.
They need to get direction, and further, they need to have something in writing that they can give to the homeowner that is a directive from this board. So we can't keep dragging our feet on that, and we need to comprise that letter, which also Tony should be involved in.
yeah.
And we should get that letter drafted, how quickly, Mr. Pierce?
Probably by early next week at the latest. because-
Aha! So early next week, meaning by no later than Wednesday, that certified letter should be in the mail, and this is one that should be certified.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, we have a budget hearing scheduled at 5 p.m. I want to recess this board shortly so that we can stretch our legs and be back here with our thoughts in good order.
Do we know where we're ending with this item?
That's exactly right. Do you have to have something on 104 tonight?
I would like direction, I would like a consensus of how we're going to proceed with 104. Whether or not we have a written policy at the time, I think.
Well, why don't you tell us your recommendation of what you think we should do on 104?
My recommendation is that you direct me that the consensus of the board is that we're going to approach 104 by exercising our rights to the easement and clearing it. And one of the clarifications that we need to probably also think about is that, are we going to, I am a proponent of going in and only clearing what we need to get the access, staying on our easement, clear the path. I mean, there's some beautiful landscaping out there of Bismarck that we don't necessarily need to take down. So I think as long as our parameters are, we are going to take off
What
of
is
our
needed?
easement,
What is
what is
essential?
needed
Okay.
to access our easement.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Well, wait a while. She's in a mid-sentence, so
No, I-
we're motion, if,
Is the Bismarck in the middle of the easement?
We
or
do
are
not,
you
we did
saying
not
it's-
need to take that.
Are you, is?
now we're going one-on-one,
is-
Margaret.
I'm asking because we're setting a precedent with this one, Gary, so I wanna know, is the Bismarck on the edge of the easement?
No, it's in the
Or-
middle.
It's in the middle of the
Mhm.
easement, so we're gonna leave that there, and we're gonna go around it on both sides. So
I-
I have a problem with, we're either gonna clear our easements, and we're not going to look at these one-on-one, or we're not. So if that's in the center of the easement, and we're gonna have to use homeowner property to get around it,
That's
I
more
have a-
liability.
then I have a problem with that.
No, we can stay on our easement and negotiate
So. I'm
several
gonna-
things out there.
The direction that I'm suggesting is we should take our easement politely, but it is our easement, has been our easement, will retain and be our easement. It should be clearly marked. They should have the direction to proceed and get it done. And after they've done this one, if you want to do any cut and paste or changes of paragraphs, we'll do that after that. But for right now, like Margaret said, no one-on-one. And because if you don't do it that way, then the next one that you go to, I understand that so-and-so, you went and made a special thing for
Yep.
them, then I want you to
Exactly.
make a special thing for me. Doesn't
Margaret, are you
work.
gonna make a motion to that effect?
I will.
Or do I have a second?
Yep, you sure do.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
So will you send us a copy of the letter?
Board
Absolutely.
is in
That'd be
recess
good.
till 5 o'clock.
Okay, so are we done?
Trees are always interesting. Hey, we just took ours out in front of yours.
Did you really?
I guess when you vote to approve the report.
Well, after a while, the root system, yeah, I mean, the root system is on.
I understand.
Yeah, well, I'm still fighting.
This is the, historic report, we'll take a look at it.
Sure.
I'll just take it.
Oh, no, that's just gonna make my pen, yes, so I don't lose track of that.
I looked at it.
Okay. Yeah, that's happened a couple times where things are, with the, well, we'll take care of it, just send it to me.